When I was 22, I started dating a guy I met on an app. His name was Dylan. We went on 4 dates in just over a month. At first, everything seemed pretty normal. Our first date was quick, just a coffee. Less than an hour, really. It felt more like a screening than an actual date, just to make sure he seemed like someone I could spend more time with. The second date was a night out at a bar. We both had a few drinks, and it was a good time. I felt at ease. By the third date, we went to dinner, and I started noticing things that felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but there was something about him, some small thing that didn't match the person I thought he was. We ended the night with a kiss. It was the first and only kiss we shared. But I convinced myself that things were okay since I let him kiss me. A couple of weeks later, we went out again, this time for drinks at a bar. By then, I wasn't feeling as excited about it. I was watching him more closely, paying attention to little quirks I hadn't noticed before. Something about the way he moved, the way he acted. It felt weird, like he was trying too hard. He started drinking more than usual, and then he got too touchy-feely. I don't mind affection, but in public? Not like that. I tried to brush it off at first, but it kept happening. He leaned in to kiss me multiple times, and I pulled back each time, uncomfortable with the way he was acting. I'm not into PDA, especially not in a crowded bar, so I told him I was tired, trying to hint that it was time to go. He asked for the check, paid it, and we left. But as we were walking to our cars, he stopped me and asked if I wanted to go home with him. I told him, "Not tonight. I'm exhausted, and I have work tomorrow," which was a complete lie. The truth was, I just wanted out of the situation. He didn't take it well. He kept insisting, saying he'd drag me to work the next day if I didn't come with him. It was ridiculous. Even if he wasn't drunk, I didn't want him driving home under the influence, so I made my decision then. I wasn't going to see him again. I walked to my car and drove off, just taking it slow, trying to stay cautious since I'd had a couple of drinks. I wasn't drunk, but I was hyper-aware, glancing over my shoulder. And then, I noticed something strange. A car had been following me for the past few blocks. At the next stoplight, I took a closer look, and I swear it was Dylan's car. I texted him, "Are you following me?" He responded almost immediately saying, "Yeah, just making sure you get home okay." I called him, but he wouldn't pick up. Something about it felt off. Creepy even. I pulled over and texted him, "Stop following me, I'm fine." He paused, then kept driving, but he didn't respond to my message. I got home, went inside, and settled in bed. A few minutes later, I got another text from him. "I hope I didn't freak you out. I got way too drunk. Next time, let's do something quieter, like dinner at my place." I didn't respond. The next morning, I woke up to another message. Oh no, did I kill the vibe? Then just a couple of hours later, a question mark. I waited a little longer before replying. I didn't want to be rude, but I knew it was time to be honest. I texted, "Hey, I think you're a great guy, but our personalities don't really mesh. I want to focus on myself right now. I hope you understand." That's when the angry texts started. The worst one was, "No, I don't understand. You strung me along for 4 dates and then dropped this bomb. How about you pay me back for everything I spent on you?" There were a few more nasty messages, but they were enough to make me block him. I thought that was the end of it, but then things got worse. I started getting no-caller ID phone calls over and over. I ignored every one of them, hoping he'd take the hint, and eventually the call stopped. But the next day, when my parents weren't home, I came back from work to find a bouquet of flowers on my doorstep. There was a card with it, apologizing and asking for a second chance. Somehow he knew where I lived. That made me feel sick. How did he find out? His idea of charming was terrifying. I texted him one final time, telling him to never contact me again or come near my house, or I'd file for a restraining order. I blocked his number and thought that would be the end. but it wasn't. One night, not long after, I was home alone. My parents' house was big, with a loft bedroom at the very top. I woke up in the middle of the night, hearing something downstairs. At first I thought I was imagining things, but then it became clearer. Someone was moving around downstairs. I listened carefully, trying to stay quiet. I heard a door creak open, followed by footsteps. I had this awful gut feeling, and I realized someone was definitely in the house. I scrambled out of bed, dropped to the floor and crawled under it, texting my family and asking who was home. My heart was pounding. I heard more footsteps and then my bedroom door opened. Someone was upstairs with me. My mind raced as I held my breath, praying they wouldn't hear me. I heard drawers opening next to my bed. Then a man's voice muttered, "God damn it." That's when I froze. The voice sounded like Dylan's. I stayed still, praying my phone wouldn't buzz or make a noise. He kept rummaging through my dresser, then sat down on my bed. I could see the faint outline of his shoes through the bed skirt. I stayed completely still, my heart racing. He sat there for what felt like forever, before he got up and cursed again. The footsteps left the room, and the door shut. I stayed under the bed, whispering into the 911 call, telling them what had happened. I didn't dare leave my hiding spot until the officers arrived. When they came, I went down to meet them at the front door, trembling. One of the officers, a woman, helped search the house. They found every window in the house was unlocked, and one in the dining room was big enough for someone to crawl through. I gave my statement and they issued a report. The next day my parents already knew everything from my texts. We went to the police station and I gave them all the details. They said they'd investigate, but without solid proof that it was Dylan in the house, it was hard to make a case. I did get a restraining order though. I was advised never to accuse him outright of breaking into my house and to avoid contacting him. After that, I moved out. I stayed with friends for a while, but to this day, I still get a chill when I think about it. What if he somehow found out where I live now? It was the fall of 2017 when everything went sideways for me. I was just a 12-year-old, settling into middle school. That time of year, our school always put on this elaborate Halloween fair, and I, being one of those overly eager kids, volunteered to help decorate the haunted house. It was a mix of fun and responsibility, but mostly fun. I stayed late with a few friends, and there was this one kid, Eli. He was always around, helping out like the rest of us. We were friendly enough, not super close, but not strangers either. He was funny, easygoing, and never once made me feel uncomfortable. Or so I thought. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in the cafeteria when a group of girls came rushing up to me, all grinning like they knew something I didn't. "Guess what?" they squealed, barely able to contain themselves. "You have a secret admirer, and he's gonna text you tonight." I felt my heart race a little. Not because I liked the idea. No, it was more curiosity than anything. Who would possibly like me? I was just one of the quiet girls. But still, I couldn't help but feel excited. That night, after I'd finished my homework and was getting ready for bed, a message popped up on my phone. I was kind of surprised to see it was from Eli. I had totally forgotten we even had each other on Facebook. The message started simple enough, but it quickly became something I didn't expect. "Maya, I need to talk to you," it said. I frowned, wondering what he wanted. "Is everything okay?" I quickly typed back. His reply took forever to show up, the little dots blinking in and out as he typed. When it finally came, I wasn't prepared for what I read. He confessed. He confessed that since Halloween he'd been thinking about me non-stop. He said he'd tried to impress me with his soccer skills at recess, but I never seemed to notice him. He said he'd been hurt by the way I ignored him. And then, at the end of the message, he asked, "Will you be my girlfriend?" I stared at the phone, trying to process what was happening. Eli? Really? I barely knew him. We'd been on good terms, but we weren't even friends. My stomach turned. I had no idea how to respond. After a long pause, I finally wrote back, gently letting him down. I told him that I didn't feel the same way and just wanted to stay friends. I could tell he wasn't happy with my answer. His responses came faster, each one more desperate than the last. Why? What did I do wrong? He wouldn't stop asking, pushing me to explain myself, and I could feel my anxiety rising. Eventually he stopped responding, but I didn't feel any relief. If anything, it made me uneasy. The next morning at school, things took a weird turn. Eli's friends started coming up to me, whispering, "Eli told us he wants to kiss you." They acted like it was some big joke, but I could hear the edge in their voices. They even said that he'd told the entire grade he was going to do it no matter what. My stomach twisted in a knot. I didn't know what to do, so I decided to tell my teacher. She listened, but didn't seem overly concerned. She just told me to stay inside during recess and lunch, and if Eli came near me, I should run straight to the classroom. It didn't feel like enough. I was scared. That's when I decided to tell the principal. He promised he'd take care of it, but I wasn't sure if I felt better or worse. The truth was, I didn't think he really understood how serious it was. It didn't take long for Eli to start showing up at my house. I lived just across the street from the school, and everyone knew it, including him. One afternoon, I'd barely stepped inside when I heard a knock on the front door. I peered out the window, just in time to see someone duck behind a car. It was him. I was sure of it. My mom opened the door to find a piece of paper on the porch. I unfolded it, my hands shaking as I read the note aloud. It said there was a surprise waiting for me under the car parked in our driveway. I went outside with my mom, but there was nothing there, not even a clue. That night, my brother's car, his old Cadillac, suddenly broke down. We had it towed, and after several attempts to fix it, we learned it would cost too much to repair. We had to sell it. I still don't know if Eli did something to it, but I always thought it wasn't a coincidence. Things only got worse from there. I started seeing Eli's friends everywhere, pushing me to give him a chance. And then one day, I saw Eli hiding behind a tree, taking pictures of me as I walked home. The click of his phone camera barely registered at first, but when I turned around, I saw him quickly lower it. He'd been following me. I wasn't sure how long it had been happening, but it felt like forever. Every morning, there was a new message from him. "I can't wait to see you today, or I bet you'll look so beautiful in class." The messages were innocent at first, but they started to make me feel trapped. He knew where I lived. He was constantly messaging me, and his friends were pressuring me to like him. It was suffocating. Then it got worse. One day I was called into the counselor's office. I thought maybe this was the break I needed. But when I sat down, what I heard wasn't what I expected. The counselor said, "Boys do these kinds of things when they like someone. It's normal. You should feel flattered." I couldn't believe it. How could she say that? How could she think it was okay? I was scared, and she was telling me to just accept it. I left her office in a daze. Later that day, I told my mom what had happened. She was furious. The next day, she took me to the principal's office. She was angry. "What are you waiting for?" she shouted. "Are you waiting for something bad to happen before you do something?" It took everything in me not to cry as I watched the principal and counselor stay silent, unable to explain themselves. My mom made it clear she wasn't leaving until they promised they would do something. And still, nothing happened. That weekend, things got even worse. I was home alone, just scrolling through YouTube, when I heard something at my window, the sound of tapping, as if someone was throwing rocks at it. I froze. My bedroom was on the second floor. Who could be outside? I crept to the window and pulled back the curtain. There he was, Eli, standing in the driveway throwing rocks at my window. My heart stopped. He looked up when he saw me, and I saw his lips move as though he was saying something. I didn't wait to hear it. I slammed the curtain shut and ran to make sure every window and door was locked. My phone buzzed as I returned to my room. 4 messages from Eli. "Why did you leave? I just wanted to talk. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. You're not who I thought you were." I blocked him right then and there. Thankfully, that was the last I heard from him, but I had to see him around school for the rest of my years, from 6th grade through senior year. I was never fully free of the anxiety he caused me. The last thing I heard about him was that he got arrested. I don't know why, but I hope it was for something serious. The worst part of all of this wasn't the harassment or the fear. It was the way the adults around me treated it. They minimized everything, brushed it off like it wasn't a big deal. They made me feel like I should have been thankful. I just hope that counselor is no longer working with kids. No one should have to endure what I did. I've always been the quiet type, the one who kept to themselves. Even as a kid, I'd get those looks from teachers, the kind that make you feel like you're different, like you don't belong. I was always a little off in social situations, never quite fitting in. I spent a lot of time in small special groups at school, nothing too serious, just some extra help for kids who didn't interact the way everyone else seemed to. Back then, I didn't understand why I was pulled out of class or why everyone else wasn't in the same boat. I just knew it made me feel different. By middle school, I was starting to get a taste of how rough things could be socially. The pressure to fit in was overwhelming. I wasn't shy exactly, I just never knew how to connect with people the way others did. It only got worse through high school. Groups formed, cliques tightened, and I felt like an outsider looking in. It wasn't that I couldn't learn, I just couldn't get past my awkwardness. That's something that stayed with me, even as I've gotten older. Sure, it's better now. I've made a few close friends, and I'm grateful for that, but I still find it hard to push myself out of my comfort zone. And then there were girls. If being shy was hard, then trying to navigate relationships was a whole other level of confusion. I had never been great at talking to women, and, well, you can guess how that goes for someone who was socially awkward. To put it simply, I didn't exactly have a smooth ride in that department. I lost my virginity when I was 21, which, looking back, was probably later than most people. But hey, it happened. And it wasn't until I was 23 that I felt like I was getting my life together. By that point, I'd moved out of my parents' house, settled into a decent job that paid well, and I bought myself a townhouse in a quiet part of town. It wasn't fancy, but it was comfortable. 2 floors. Nice space for one person. I figured it was the kind of place that could impress people my age if they ever came over. But it didn't matter much. My life was mostly about keeping to myself and getting things done. That was until I met her. Her name was Megan. We matched on a dating app one night, and we hit it off instantly. She was smart, funny, easy to talk to. We went on a dinner date that I thought went terribly, but apparently I was wrong. She texted me later saying she had a great time and wanted to see me again. I couldn't believe it. So, we started dating. One date turned into 2, then 3. Eventually we were officially together and things felt good. I was finally starting to feel like maybe I was capable of being in a relationship. But the honeymoon phase didn't last as long as I thought it would. I started noticing small things that made me uneasy. At first, it was little things. Texts that came in too fast, too many, asking where I was, what I was doing. I thought I was being paranoid, but it was getting more intense. One night when I was out with my friends, Megan started texting me nonstop. I was just hanging out at Mark's place, and I didn't want to deal with her frantic messages. But when I didn't respond right away, she started calling and calling. That's when it happened. She showed up at Mark's house unannounced. His mom let her in, and she walked downstairs like she owned the place, her face red with anger. Megan wasn't the type to hide her feelings, and this time she was furious. She started yelling at me in front of my friends, demanding to know why I wasn't answering her texts about our plans for the next day. I tried to calm her down, but it was too late. She wanted me to leave with her, and when I said no, she insisted. I apologized to my friends and went outside with her. We had an argument on the sidewalk that felt like it could never end. She wanted to come back to my place, but I told her no. We both drove home separately, and as soon as I got there, I sent her a text. I said I needed space, I needed a break, I had to get away. The text started flooding in right away. She called, left voice messages, and sent more texts. When I finally stopped responding, it escalated. She showed up at my door. I heard her banging on it, the doorbell ringing like mad. The neighbor even came out to ask what was going on. Megan screamed at him, calling me all sorts of names, and my neighbor calmly told her to leave. I stayed quiet, listening from behind the door. My heart was racing. The next day, I decided I'd had enough. I blocked her and took my location off the sharing app. I thought that would be the end of it. But Megan didn't take it well. A week later, I was at Phil's house again, hanging out with some friends. I got home late, around 11 p.m., and popped some food in the microwave. I wasn't tired, but I wasn't feeling like doing anything either. As I sat down to watch a movie, I heard something odd from the dining room. The house was quiet, too quiet. I muted the TV to listen more closely, and that's when I heard the faint click of a door opening. My stomach dropped. The door between the dining room and the den had been shut earlier. I knew it. I always make sure all the doors in the house are closed. I grabbed the biggest knife from the kitchen and called 911. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I wasn't going to sit around and wait. My voice shook as I told the dispatcher what I thought was going on. I believed Megan had broken into my house. I waited outside, and it wasn't long before the police showed up. They searched the place from top to bottom, even checking the crawl spaces and under the furniture. No one was there. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The fear that something was about to happen didn't leave me. I locked myself in my room after the police left. But when I checked my phone, I saw a bunch of messages from an unknown number. It was Megan. She was texting me nonstop. The messages were crazy. She was apologizing, begging me to talk. One of them said, "Wake up 8 times in a row." I couldn't believe it. I sent her a final message, telling her that I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. I thought I had made myself clear, but I guess I hadn't. That's when it happened. I heard a scream from the closet in my room. My blood ran cold as I recognized Megan's voice. "No," she screamed. And then the closet door burst open. I didn't think. I just ran. I shoved the bedroom door open and bolted for the stairs. Megan was right behind me, a knife in her hand, slashing at the door. I pushed the door shut behind me, but I could hear the blade slicing through the wood. I had no choice but to do the unthinkable. I screamed, "I love you, please stop." It was the only thing that calmed her down for a second. I grabbed my phone and called 911 again, keeping the door shut as best as I could. We talked through the door. She wanted me to let her in, but I stalled. I said I was scared. I told her I loved her, but I needed her to put the knife down first. She agreed. The moment she tossed the knife across the room, I yanked the door open and tackled her. She screamed, but I didn't care. I was on the phone with 911, telling them my address as I held her down. It was chaos. When the police arrived, it was like a scene out of a movie. They kicked down the door, and it was so loud that it drowned out everything else. Megan was cuffed and hauled away, still crying, still screaming. I was in shock. The nightmare wasn't over. There was a long, painful legal battle after that. Megan was convicted of some serious charges, and even though it's over, I'll never forget what happened. I never wanted to share this, but here I am. It's the first time I've been able to talk about it without feeling completely overwhelmed by fear. Megan isn't the same person I thought I knew, and the whole experience left me scarred, but I'll live with it.